We're going to have a discussion this morning, and we're going to talk about manufacturer consolidation and how it affects distributors and how distributors might want to deal with that. So I've asked my panelists here to speak as industry insiders, not as representatives of their own companies, because every company's got their own issues, but everybody up here has got a different range of experience and different perspectives. And what we're going to do is we're going to examine the issues, and the challenge to you, because we're going to open this up for questions to you guys as well, is you're going to have to listen carefully, because we aren't going to be talking about specific names and specific manufacturers or worst cases or monumentally stupid things people have done, but you just need to listen closely and figure out how you can extract value. The intent here is to talk about what works and what doesn't work and how things should or could go if we were applying some best practices to it. So what I'm going to do is, I'm Mike Marks. I should have said that first. I'm a consultant, been involved in this industry is very important to Indian River Consulting. We've been in it for a long time, really long time. And I had hair, and I could stand up and look down and see my shoes directly from standing up. So I'm the moderator. I've written actually a book on the subject that we're going to be talking about today, so I'll be chiming in as well. But I'm going to ask each of my panelists to introduce themselves. But remember, they're individuals and industry insiders. Are not representatives of their own company. So, Bob, I'll let you go first.
Oh, thank you. I'm Bob Reynolds, formerly of Graybar, retired January 1st. So I'm not tied to a company today. So when I speak, I'm speaking on behalf of Bob Reynolds, not on behalf of Graybar. I had just about 41 years with Graybar on both sides of the business, the electrical side and the telecommunications side, and did a variety of jobs within the company over those 41 years and pretty much traveled the world. So happy to be here.
Probably happy to be out, too. Billy, how about you?
Well, I'm Billy Elliot, the electric supply.
Pull that mic a little closer.
Sorry, I'm Billy Elliot with the electric supply, and I'm the running jokes. I'm the SOB, or son of Bill. Some people interpret it differently. I grew up in this business, so I started in a warehouse, playing in a warehouse, and antagonizing the warehouse people. I guess kind of jack of all trades. You keep moving around. I've been inside sales, outside sales, operations, wrote software. So I grew up in the business. So I'm not sure I'm as well qualified as my esteemed panelists here, but do what we can.
Okay. Mr. Eisenbrown, who's gone to the dark side.
Yeah. Bob Eisenbrown. I spent 32 years on the manufacturing side. Mostly with Rockwell, 2 different tours, but ABB, Eaton, and actually in all cases was there at companies during an acquisition, just post-acquisition, in both the case of ABB and its creation in the early 90s, and also then with Eaton, post-acquisition of the Westinghouse business. And most of my experience was in the last 25 years was running business units, but then I left Rockwell last year and was responsible for their global channel strategy. I spent almost 30 years of my career in global roles, besides being involved heavily in the North American market. And now I'm running a new company named Edge, which is Electrical Distribution Global Enterprise, which was a company formed by 11 owners that come from this industry to invest and build a portfolio outside of North America. So I don't have direct involvement in the North American market other than through our member owners. So.
Sounds good. Well, before we dive into the whole concept of what the distributor is supposed to do, in terms of this whole manufacturer consolidation, I'd be interested in what you guys would have to say. Is this a phase we're going through? Is it going to be over? Is this a long term? Why is all of this happening? I just would like to sort of set a larger scale. So,
it hasn't just started, and I think it'll continue for a long time. There's lots of reasons why manufacturers consolidate, the same reasons distributors do. A lot of new products, new opportunities, broaden your horizons, certainly growth. Today, more and more people are concerned about growth and shareholder value, and I think that's what we're discussing. What are we doing here? Are we helping ourselves or are we hurting ourselves? And I think the answer to both is yes. And
wait a minute, do that again.
I said, are we helping ourselves or hurting ourselves? And the answer to both is yes.
Okay, got it.
I agree with him. I don't think it's anything new. It's like it comes in waves. Waves. There's consolidation, there's a little slows down, but it seems like it's always been here. As long as I've been in business, there's always some new acquisition. So I think Bob hit on the head.
Yeah, I think first of all, a lot of the changes and forces that we talked about yesterday, by Zaney, that's the name. Globalization, I think what's particularly interesting, it maybe seems like it's picked up here, is global companies, especially non-North American companies, all of a sudden, it's probably a good indication to support the notion this is a pretty good place to be, increasing their footprint in North America, which probably 5 or 10 years ago was looked at as a place that was going to be relatively stagnant, and a lot of the manufacturers were basically looking at to gain market access or new technology outside of North America. So I think, if anything, we ought to look at it as a favorable to the North American market. It's going to have a long run because people are putting a lot of money. I mean, we probably haven't seen in our industry this kind of amount of foreign direct investment in North America in many, many years. So
it is all about the money.
Yeah.
So how do you tell when one of these events goes down? Sort of, is it easy to tell, or how would you start to look at who wins and who loses? I mean,
from whose perspective?
Well, but I mean, that's the part that makes this, I think, really interesting, because there are some different perspectives. But I mean, if we just took the manufacturer side, I mean, where you were saying sometimes we hurt ourselves and sometimes we win. I mean, what are the things you need to look at?
Well, I think the first thing is, what's the strategy and what are you trying to accomplish? And I'm not sure we all understand that. Why a manufacturer is doing something or why are distributors doing something. I was talking with somebody last evening and I said, it just dawned on me because I was thinking about what are you going to say when you're on this panel. Having been on both sides of the businesses on Graybar, the electrical and the telecommunications side, there was a lot of consolidation going on the communication side too. We were one of the major players, and I can tell you, I can't think of one major consolidation, that went on the communication side when I didn't get a telephone call to meet and have a lunch or dinner and talk confidentially about what was going to happen, why it was going to happen, what it would mean to the industry.
You mean before the fact?
Before the fact. Okay, of course it was highly confidential. And you certainly understood and you had a voice. It doesn't mean you were going to change their mind, but they wanted to make sure that we weren't going to hurt our current distribution and we weren't going to hurt our current customer base. I've never experienced that on the electrical side of the business. I don't know why we don't have that same open communication to know what's going to happen and really probably save ourselves a lot of money and a lot of consternation by doing it that way.
Yeah.
What are some of the other things? I mean, the different perspectives about how you win and lose, or who wins and loses.
Gosh, that's tough. I'm like you. I was trying to think about what to say. I don't know. I haven't any magic answers here. I guess it depends. It depends. You're talking about manufacturers. I guess we're speaking manufacturers. I think Bob's one that says this all the time. When you join these things, ought to be 1 and 1 ought to be 3, but a lot of times it's 1 and 1 is 1.5 or 1 3/4, and so it just seems like everybody's trying to be bigger. Just if they're not getting bigger, they're stagnant. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is.
Well, it certainly seems that going back to the strategy point, it's not real clear in some cases.
Well, and I think Bob's right. I mean, we don't have as many conversations, and it seems lately it's been better about them having conversations. Well, they're trying to find out what are you looking for when we join or we merge. So I think they're doing a better job of that than they've done in the past. Like you say, you just something got announced, and we're now one company. But
well, it's almost like when they start after it's announced, they come in and start justifying. Manufacturers come into distributors and start justifying what they're doing. And they'll sit there and say, well, this is what we're doing and this is how it's going to help you. And a lot of times the answer is yes, but I'm already there. I'm already there with another partner. Yeah. What are your expectations of me now? And how am I supposed to throw the other partner out? Yeah. And just because you've elected to go in this direction, you want me to support it, but you've never asked me up front, can I support it and does it make sense?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you got to remember in the last couple of years, particularly post-recession, but there've been other cycles. The strategic obviousness gets diluted as these manufacturers, particularly public companies, end up having a lot of cash. So they get a lot of pressure to basically redeploy
just to do something with the money.
Just to do something with the money. I mean, just listen. One of the best sources to find out what's going on pre and post is if it's a public company, listen to their investor calls quarterly, and see where their investors are pressuring them and so forth. And buying shares back doesn't have as much return most times as basically acquisitions or perceived. So I think when people do have piles of cash, they pay high price tags, and that's when they also most often run into the 1 + 1 = less than 2 problem, because they do something rash or becomes a bidding war and so forth. I think the prudent manufacturers obviously are trying to gain scale, gain leverage. They've thought through the channel impact. At the end of the day, what you would hope to do is have the manufacturer think it through from the standpoint of, is it going to make me more attractive? I think the mistake a lot of people make is if I have scale, I get more leverage, and I can essentially apply that leverage to the channel.
In other words, it's about market power.
Yeah, and that's when the animosity kicks in, is when all of a sudden that guy walks in with his wingman from the new company, and he indicates to you that now because they have this broader portfolio, they expect you to behave differently, than you were before. And that's when antagonism kicks in. And as Bob said, hey, I've got a good line in that space. You haven't made it attractive for me. Matter of fact, if anything, you may have made it a detriment. Mm-hmm. And by the way, you've got 2 different rep firms who have competitive lines that now you're introducing into my space. So there's all sorts of other complications that come into play here if it hasn't been thought out ahead of time.
Right.
So.
Well, the sense I get is that a lot of times, maybe because of some of that pressure, it isn't thought out that thoroughly. I think that people work about the financial deal, not how do you actually make it work once the deal's done.
But in defense of manufacturers, on talking to channels early, I can tell you where I came from. We didn't talk. There were very few people in the company that knew it was going down because of the scrutiny now, the SEC, confidentiality, public information. So, I'd say that information has gotten extremely controlled, but you would hope there's people in the company who appreciate how that's going to work in the channel, but there may or may not be. So,
one of the things, like you said, they can't. They may not talk openly ahead of time, but one thing they can do is not, once they make that decision as public, don't go rushing in. They need to take time and understand, trying to get people's input rather than just
ask instead of tell.
Yeah, I know that once they make that merger, they're trying to justify those mergers by economies of scale and such, but they need to be careful not to go too fast and make sure they work all the.
But also, that they're not telling the truth when they come in and say nothing's going to change.
Yeah, we can do a lot with that, but we'll let it go. Well, but one of the things that I hear a lot is one of these deals go down, and it's just like Billy says, somebody comes in, they start telling you, and you're looking at the guy that's talking to you, and you just look at him and go like, what's your package? Do you know if you're going to be around? And then all of a sudden the whole conversation changes because that person's not sure they're going to be around, which kind of drops the credibility of the whole thing.
Well, I think you're getting to the crux of the problem. Doing the deal is easy. You get senior management of 2 companies get together and say, hey, this would be great. We can help you in Europe. You can help us in North America. Look at what I'll do for our shareholders. We'll grow. But the key to anything is execution. And how do you get it executed? The problem is it's those people aren't doing the execution. It's moving down, and it's not really clear where they're trying to go or what they're trying to do. So the people that are out talking to the distributors saying, let me tell you how good this is going to be for you, in the back of their mind they're saying, I'm telling them how good it's going to be. I don't even know if I'm going to survive this as a manager or, as a officer in this new company. Because there's going to be winners and there's going to be losers, and you just can't go out and overpay for companies and then turn around and not take cost out. It doesn't work, and eventually it has to come out. Even though people say it's not going to change, eventually it has to change.
Well, yeah, and that's my point to a good source. Right after an acquisition, if it's a public company in particular, I encourage you listen and read every investor communication, okay? And listen for two words, cost synergy and sales synergy. Because basically those are the two.
Translate that for us in plain
Cost
language.
synergy says, okay, by combining these, and typically, how much cost can I take out, to make sure the deal is accretive or, get a return, particularly if I drive up a high price. And cost synergy, I'd say most companies hit their cost synergies because they can calculate that. They're not dependent on the market. They're not dependent on the channels. That's pretty obvious stuff as long as you can execute. Sales synergy, which just says, geez, because now I have this larger bundle, I can take products from the company I bought, put it through the channel that I've already got and get some accelerated sales there or vice versa. Now you're dependent on a lot more human factors, the market and so forth. And sales synergies is typically where companies don't hit their numbers. That's where the 1 + 1 equals 1.5, because also if you disenfranchise the channel, because now and the worst offender, typically in my experience, is the local salesperson. He's not informed.
Wait a minute, I kind of looked at him as the victim.
No, he's also first of all, he's telling a story that he thinks is going to be good for him.
Okay.
One, he's not close to what the real strategy is, particularly early on. And a lot of them just behave poorly because they think that they've got a bigger hammer now to get more leverage. So they have a tendency to come, and I've seen this at companies I work for, and you say, no. Like at the end of the day, what every salesperson I'll be doing is walking in and saying, how can I help? Not telling the person what to do. But, it's, like I said, if somebody's got a high sales synergy number, I guarantee you the channel is going to be impacted. You just don't know how it is, and they haven't described how they're going to integrate, But again, they're dealing with a lot of factors they don't control, versus on the cost synergy side. So.